Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Grants Pass School District 7's virtual town hall. It is 6 o'clock, so we are going to get started. I'm Kristen Hosfelt, the communications specialist for District 7. Thank you for taking the time to be here tonight. As you were waiting, you likely saw tonight's agenda. We'll be recapping our reopening plans, and when we are finished with our presentations, we will open it up to questions. We will try to get through as many as possible tonight. We anticipate the town hall will run about an hour. That's how long these virtual forums have lasted in town halls past, at least. Before we begin, we do want to go over a few housekeeping rules. We ask that you hold on to questions until we've made it through the presentation. We may answer your question as we go. Once we do open it up for questions, we ask that you enter those into the Q&A. You can see the buttons at the bottom of your screen. There's a Q&A button. Please enter them there, not the chat. We don't want your questions to get lost in the comments. Of course, if you can't see something or can't hear us, make sure you let us know that in the chat. We certainly welcome your questions and feedback. We just ask that comments remain courteous and on topic. Comments that go against our community standards could result in removal from the town hall. And if you have additional questions when we wrap up, please email them to the Office of the Superintendent email. Director Bloomquist, I think you have that email on the next slide. We'll pop it up at the end of the town hall as well. So if you don't have it already in your email, or if you need to jot it down, we will pop that email up again at the end. And lastly, this town hall can hold a maximum of 1,000 people. If for some reason we reach that cap tonight, we will look at holding a second town hall. We also are recording this town hall in its entirety, and it will be available on our website for those who couldn't make it or those who would like to watch it afterward. So joining me on our panel tonight is Superintendent Kirk Kolb, Chief Finance Operations and Safety Officer Sherry Ely, Director of Elementary Education Susan Zatola, Director of Secondary Education Trish Evans, Director of Student Services Linda White, Director of School Improvement Todd Bloomquist, and our Director of Human Resources Danny Huber-Cantola. And starting things off for us tonight is Superintendent Kirk Kolb.
Thanks, Kristen. As Kristen said, make sure you can hear me okay, right? Good? All right. So as Kristen said, my name is Kirk Kolb, and I have the privilege to serve you and your students and our community as a superintendent of schools here. I just want to say myself and my team truly find it to be an honor and a privilege to serve in the capacity we do here in Grants Pass School District. I want you to know it's our highest priority to get as many students back in school with their teachers as possible. And we know we must do it in the safest way possible for both students and staff. As most of you know, there are many requirements, we'll touch on a few here, that we must adhere to bring students back under specific circumstances. So I sent a communication yesterday announcing our plans for returning students in a phased manner. Director Cantola will be explaining why that is in just a bit. So we already have our kindergarten through third grade back in a hybrid, and it's going incredibly well. And so our next phase is to bring our fourth and fifth graders back, and our target date is to start on Monday, November 30th, right after the Thanksgiving break. And after a successful transition with K through 5, we're looking to start middle school in a hybrid fashion with a target date of January 4th, right after the holiday break and the winter break. And then we need to do middle school really well and show that we can get that kickoff to secondary going well. And when we just demonstrate successful middle school, the high school will start at the beginning of third quarter. Sounds like a long ways off, but February 1st is going to come very quickly. And so thank you again for joining us tonight. We hope this is informative. Again, questions in the Q&A. We'll be trying to answer those as we go, but it'll also help us develop a bigger Q&A that people can access at any time. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to our HR guy, Director Danny Cantola, to talk a little bit about the metrics.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Superintendent Kolb. Appreciate your heart, care for District 7. So school districts are obliged to follow Oregon Department of Education, and they put out metrics in cooperation with the Oregon Health Authority about when it's safe for counties to consider bringing kids back. And so we had metrics at the beginning of the school year that basically said we could not bring back kids who were in 4th through 12th grade. And then we got a pleasant surprise. A few Thursdays ago, we got new metrics. And so I think Director Bloomquist is going to put the metrics on the screen. And so the simplest way that I know to explain the metrics is that it's kind of a stoplight system. It's green is go, yellow is cautious, red is stop, and then it's got this little orange transition label on it. And so we are on that top line there where it says county case rate per 100,000 people over 14 days. And what the heck does that mean? That means in order to be green, we would have to have less than 50 new COVID cases in a 14-day period per 100,000 people. We're not in green right now with our rising numbers. We're actually in yellow, and we're pretty solidly in yellow. And so that's good news, because what yellow does, if we scroll down for our county, it allows us to have elementary schools open cautiously. And so we've been having our K through 3 students in person on a hybrid model. And so cautiously, we are going to open our 4 through 5 and have our entire 5th grades back on a hybrid model starting right after Thanksgiving on November 30th. And so that's really exciting news. But if you look at that thing, scroll down, there's a little bitty 4 at the very bottom of that column. And basically what that 4 says is you can start to open other schools, but you have to do it cautiously. And by cautiously, it basically says you have to look at what the outbreak size is, and over time, you can't have outbreaks in your schools in order to open the rest of your schools. So November 30th, we're going to open 4-5, and we're excited to do that. And then we're going to wait a couple of weeks, and if we don't have outbreaks where there's 3 outbreaks, positive COVID tests in any one single school, we will look at opening the middle schools after the Christmas winter break on January 4th. So that's our little metrics about whether or not we're being successful in opening schools, is if we have less than 3 positive cases in any one school site. So we're excited that we have not had that in our schools at this point. And so we are optimistic that on January 4th, we will be opening the middle schools. So what's huge about that, and I don't think people quite understand sometimes, is that when we open our middle schools, those will be the biggest schools in the state that are open for in-person learning, where all the kids get to come back on a hybrid model. And so we're excited for that. Then, again, assuming we successfully are able to open and we don't have any 3 COVID cases in any one school spot, we will be opening up the high school. And again, that's a little bit like moving a battleship. It's a big school, and it will be by far the biggest school in the state that's possible to be open. So again, we got to look at things like high schools give credit, and they count for college and so forth and so on. So the timing of opening that is really, really important. And Director Evans will talk more about that as we go. But right now, green means go, yellow means open cautiously, red means put on the brakes. We are yellow, and so we are going to be opening our schools cautiously, and we are excited to do that. So speaking of cautiously, it's my honor to introduce Sherry Ely. She's our Chief Financial Officer, and she is also a #1 top safety officer in all of the state. So Sherry Ely is going to talk about some of the safety. So Sherry, take it away.
Thank you, Danny. I wanted to share with you guys how our K3 opening has gone up to this point. As you guys are probably aware, we've had our K3 kids in school since September, and I am happy to let you know that it has gone really well. We have our safety protocols in place where the students have to check in when they get to school. Their temperature is checked, their overall health condition is monitored, and they have to wear their mask in school. They have to wash their hands a lot, use hand sanitizer. We have students that are cohorted, so they stay with their classroom or whatever special group that they're in. We do the contact tracing, so we keep logs so that we know which kids are interacting with which with other students and staff. And so far it has gone really, really well. We have had a couple of incidents where we've had a couple of positive COVID tests in our school. So you guys probably read that in the paper at Allendale. We had initially one last Wednesday, and so we had to quarantine one classroom. And then on Thursday of that same week, we had another positive case, and so we quarantined that classroom. And then this week, actually today, we had another positive case at Riverside Elementary. So what happens when we have a positive case? We work very closely with our local health authority, and they help us with contact tracing and knowing which classrooms have been affected, and if we need to just quarantine a single classroom, do we need to quarantine more than one classroom, or what we need to do. So in the case of Allendale, we only had to quarantine the 2 classrooms that were affected. And quarantine for those classrooms means they are out of school and quarantining at home for 14 days. And at Riverside, the situation that we had today, we did have one positive case, but it affected several classrooms. And so we have several classrooms in quarantine, and our health authority, out of an abundance of caution, and because we just have 2 days left in this week for school, we closed the school for the remainder of the weekend, so our students will be on comprehensive distance learning. And so when we do quarantine, students still have access to their education. And so that is through, like I mentioned before, comprehensive distance learning. And so they're not losing out on their education. They are still able to interact with their teacher and their classmates, but it's all virtual. And so I think the last thing that I would like to share is the reason that we have been able to do as well as we have is because you, as parents who have kids in our school, have taken the precautions seriously. You've talked with your children. They know that they have to follow the rules at school, and the kids have been amazing. As always, they're wonderful about doing what we ask them to do, and that really, really helps us because our goal is to keep as many kids in school as we can and to bring back as many kids to school as we can. And that takes us all as a total community working together, you know, monitoring what we do at home and where we go, and making sure that our kids are following those rules, washing their hands a lot, and, you know, doing those things that we know keep them safe and help them to not contract the virus. So I think I'm going to turn it over to Todd now, who's going to talk to you about hybrid and how that works and all of those things technology related.
Sure. Thanks, Sherry. So we do get that question, why hybrid? Why not just bring all the kids back? If the metrics say, hey, you can bring kids back, bring them all back. And one of the things we have to follow in all of this are pages and pages of rules about how do we bring people back safely. So one of the requirements that we have, for example, is that every person needs to have 35 square feet around them. So our schools are actually not large schools. We have a lot of kids, a lot of amazing kids, but we have pretty small schools. And so getting that 35 square feet in for every single person just actually doesn't work. And in addition to that, everybody needs to have about 6 feet of being physically distanced from everybody else in order to kind of make this whole thing work. So that's one of the reasons why just bringing everybody back all at one time doesn't quite work for us. We also have to follow all those safety protocols for us to operate schools in a way that is compliant with all the COVID concerns and the science that's out there that's kind of driving what we're doing. We have to make sure that there's enough space around everybody. So we talk about how close you are, the proximity to each other, and how much time you spend near each other as some of those key conditions for, well, could you pass a virus that way? So keeping people farther than 6 feet apart, those barriers, which those masks are super important, and then just having that 35 square feet distance around is super important. There's also a piece that we have to attend to called cohorting. So when all the kids come into our buildings, we have to manage where all those children are and who they're in contact with. So there's a lot of other numbers that in there, but all that is to say about 100 kids total can be in a cohort group. And even then, if somebody has an issue, say COVID related, we have to be able to contact trace with all those other kids and staff and those kind of things. So that's also one reason why bringing them all back makes that very, very complicated. The other piece that we're trying to be very sensitive to is just how this impacts the family. So recognizing that siblings, some of you have children in several different grade levels, several different buildings. And so we're trying to also manage bringing people back so that your student's schedule is a manageable one for all of you, so that you don't have kids coming and going on different days of the week, those kinds of things. So those are some of the highlights of why we are choosing to do the hybrid model, because it's about safety, it's about that physical distancing, and it's also attending to when kids can be in school. So if you have any questions about that, please put that into the Q&A, and we're happy to keep answering those questions. And then I think I'm going to hand this right over to Ms. Zatola. She's going to talk to us about 4th and 5th grade.
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm Susan Zatola. I'm the Director of Elementary Education, and I have I think I get the best spot of the evening tonight because in just a couple of weeks our 4th and 5th graders get to come back to school. And when you count summer, but when they come back, it will have been 8 months since they've been in school, and I mean, you all know that's been a long time, far longer than we ever anticipated when this started, and to be in the process finally of gearing up and planning for them to come back makes us all very, very happy. I want to give a huge public shout out to our elementary schools, our principals first and foremost, but also every single person, bus drivers, custodians, our office staff, and of course all of our teachers, because as Director Ely explained, it has gone very well with K3, and because it has gone so well in K3, that is why we are able to take this next step and have our 4th and 5th graders come back. So so what does that mean? If you are a parent of a kindergarten through 3rd grade student, it means there's nothing new. You just get to bring your 4th and 5th grader to school at the same time now, but it's exactly the process and systems and procedures and protocols that are already in place for K3 will be the same for 4-5. And because the elementary schools have already started, those things are so well practiced and are just, the systems are running so smooth now that for us it's just incorporating more kids. It's not as huge a lift as it is for middle school and high school, but at the same time we're very happy that usually we're so different between secondary and elementary that we don't always get to share what we've learned with them, but we get to this time. And so they have also, because things are going so well at elementary, our middle school and high school admin and some staff have been visiting the elementaries and getting to experience and see how we're doing things so that they can apply that to their sites. So it's I think it's been wise all around to do this slow and patient and steady roll up with having kids back in school. So if you only have a 4th and 5th grader, here are some of the things that I wanted to touch base on for you. Just reminders, you've probably heard this. You'll be hearing more and more about it from your teachers and from the principal at your site, but just a reminder. Some of the things that are different from when you left school last year, that we do have our buildings closed to parents. So students obviously will be going in and out, but you'll be dropping your kids off and just letting them get out of the car and go into school. So just a reminder, you won't be walking them to their classroom or walking them into the building. And the same goes for at the end of the day. You have or will be receiving information about our pickup program called Pick My Kid. And it's how we're dismissing kids this year in 4th and 5th grade. This only applies to elementary. But you will be staying in your car and not getting out of the car. It's very, very important to remember that. It helps with safety and but also with speed. just trust the process and follow those directions that you'll be getting. Students are coming in a hybrid fashion, as Director Bloomquist talked about, and so your student will be assigned either a Monday, Thursday schedule or a Tuesday, Friday schedule. And so if you haven't already heard about that, you'll be contacted by your school as to what days your child is assigned. And just so you know, those family connections, sibling connections for the hybrid schedule were set from before school even started. So if you have students at other levels, at middle school, high school, multiple students in an elementary school, the families have already been coordinated for that AB schedule. So you don't have to worry like, oh no, I have a student in another school or a first grader and I need them to be on the same day. They already are on the same day. We've already made those arrangements. The last thing that I wanted to just touch on that will be a big shift from what you have experienced this fall to now. You're used to, and your children are used to, in the CDL model, having, when they log into Canvas, they have live time with the teacher. So synchronous instruction, live, real time. That will not happen now on the 3 days that they are at home. That's the biggest shift that I want you to know about. Because teachers will be with kids live during the day, if they're not with your student, they're with the other half of the class on the other days. And so on the 3 days that they're at home, they will be using Canvas. All instruction will be loaded into Canvas. There will be a daily video from your child's teacher that is a greeting and a hello and an overview of what the expectations are that day, but it will not be a live, sign in at this time and I have my math instruction. The live instruction will happen in the classroom on their 2 days, and then at home will be things that can be done independently. The rereading of the stories, accelerated reader, iReady math practice, independent writing, all the things that can be done independently are done through Canvas on the home days, and then live instruction is obviously on either their A or B day. And you can expect there to be about 2.5 hours of work and instruction and practice on their Canvas page, and then on top of that as a weekly piano and music lessons. So that's really going to be the biggest shift in what your children see at home. But I can tell you that teachers and staff and the librarians and the bus drivers, everybody they're chomping at their bit and excited and can't wait to see your kids in person. So as am I. And with that, I am going to turn it over to our Director of Special Services, Linda White.
Thank you so much, Susan and team. I have just a few notes to share with you about some of the services and sort of some of the differences that may be taking place for students who have disabilities. We have our team has been working very, very hard to support our students who have an IEP. As you know, all the services that students receive in special education, the students receive those regardless of what instructional model we're in. So as we're making shifts and changing, our department is working very hard and very closely with the other departments to make sure that we're in step and we provide all the services that the students are entitled to. So a few differences. One of the things we're happy to report is that students who have an IEP who are in a self-contained classroom, like our explorations class or life skills class, because those classes are fairly small and we have a high level of support, we are going to be able to have those students back more than 2 days a week. We're working on those details now, but because there is space in the room and because we're being able to offer 3 or 4 days of school a week for our elementary students who are in those site-based programs. That's good news because some of those are the students who have the most difficulty accessing comprehensive distance learning. So we're working hard to make sure everything is safe, but bring those students back as much as we safely can. We also are, some of you are aware that we are able to offer limited in-person opportunities. We've been doing it throughout the fall, and that means students are able to come in in all of our grades, are able to come in for a 2-hour chunk of time for some extra academic help or support that they might need through their IEP. And we're going to be able to continue doing that throughout whatever this transition time takes as far as bringing students, more students back. We're going to be able to continue the limited in person. So that means some small groups for those who really have the need, as well as the kinds of testing that are sometimes needed in order for our specialists to do assessments for special ed eligibility. We're still able to bring kids in person for those. So those are some of the sort of details about the way that we're able to offer our services for special education. We're excited about that. I'm very proud of our team, and we're just going to keep moving forward, doing the very best we can to support our kids. And next, I'm going to turn it over to Trish Evans, who is our Director of Secondary Education, to talk about our secondary plans.
Thanks, Linda. And hello, everybody. I want to first and foremost acknowledge we've been collecting a lot of information from our parents and our students at the secondary level. And we know that there are parents and students who are disappointed that we're not opening sooner. We also acknowledge that there are parents and students who are concerned that we're even considering opening. So we're wrestling with this back and forth with our community, and it literally is about 50-50. You can talk to one parent and they're like, come on, let's get the kids in. And you can talk to another parent and they're like, no, you can't do it. So we are really wanting to proceed with caution and wanting to do it right. We are learning a lot from the elementary, and a lot of what Director Zatola shared with you, you'll hear very similar things about what's going to happen at secondary. But just imagine, Grants Pass High School is a high school of about 1,800 students. It's one of the largest comprehensive high schools in the state of Oregon. We don't have that much physical space. We're not able to bring all the students back. In addition, one of the things at both middle school and high school we have to consider is how we cohort kids. What Ready School Safe Learners, Oregon Department of Education's guidance tells us we are required to ensure that students only have contact with 100 other students within a school day. Well, think about how your student typically at the secondary level has moved throughout the day from class to class, have gathered at break times, have had open campus for lunch at Grants Pass High School. We're not able to do any of those kinds of things or activities, and we really have to reduce our class sizes. So at the middle school level in particular, we're wanting to start as soon as January 4th. There is going to be a transition plan that week. Our 6th graders have never been on our campus before. And so we will be just starting with 6th graders. You'll get specific dates and times from the building administrators at both North and South Middle School. We want to make sure that 6th graders feel comfortable, know where things are, meet our staff. And then we will gradually add on 7th and 8th grade as we gear up for our hybrid. The way we've done it at the middle school for cohort sizes is that students, and you probably have already recognized this if you've been following what your students doing in CDL, they have the same basically 12 to 15, 16 kids in the same period every day. Those same kids are the kids they're going to see on campus every day. They'll come in to the school through their check-in procedures, taking temperature, doing a visual, ensuring that they feel healthy and well enough to be on campus. They will go to their first period classroom, which is where they will stay until class starts. They will be physically distance within the classroom. So we will have tables spread out. We've moved all of our classes around at both North and South Middle School. So in essence, a student will move from this classroom door to this classroom door to this classroom door instead of all the way across the campus. There are some exceptions to that, like our band rooms at both middle schools are on the other side of the school at South, or in a different building. We're going to be setting up traffic patterns, one way, if you will, like you're driving down the road, getting students from point A to point B as they transition between their classrooms. It is our intent to have the students attend all 6 of their class periods on the day that they're in person on their Monday, Thursday, or Tuesday, Friday rotation. Students will be required to wear a mask during the entire time that they're on campus. We'll be doing a lot of frequent hand washing and hand sanitation. We have cleaning protocols that as students move from classroom to classroom, we have to ensure that we sanitize the desk space that the student was sitting at to ensure that the next student coming in sitting at that space has a clean, safe environment. Lunch is going to be very different as well. So for the middle school, what will happen is the group of 12 that the students are with will join up with 4 other groups of 12, and there will be about 50 to 60 kids who will be sitting 6 feet apart in different locations on campus, the small gym, the cafeteria. We will be marking spaces where students can actually sit and take off their masks to eat their lunch. We will then go out to recess at middle school, where students will be in a zone on the playground where they'll have to wear their face coverings the entire time, but they'll be outside. If it's a rainy day, we'll have to stick with our small gym and cafeteria plan. 6th graders will eat at one time, then 7th graders, then 8th graders. And so we have it all staged out to accomplish all of the requirements. What we haven't done and what we need time to do is practice those things with our teachers, our classified staff, work through the details of how that all happens. You also probably have been, if you've driven by North and South Middle School, you have seen a lot of construction going on. We're not going to talk about the construction projects today, but I'll just tell you that it's still in progress. And so that's kind of hampering our ability to get open safely as well. We need to ensure that the construction stuff is wrapped up so that we have the space to have students move between class periods, to have students dropped off by the buses and by parents. So the construction is another big factor. We believe that should be wrapped up right around the Christmas break time. So we should be ready to go as soon as January 4th. The academic day is one that just trying to wrap your head around. What we've been doing in CDL at middle school is there's been an A day and a B day. So students have been in synchronous instruction online every day for periods 1, 2, and 3 on an A day, and then periods 4, 5, and 6 on a B day. And then that just rotates every day. In the hybrid, that's all going to change. And so really trying to get our heads wrapped around when students are on campus for their Monday, Thursday time, if they're a Monday, Thursday kid, same day as their siblings at elementary and middle, or elementary and high school, you've already heard that. The students will attend all 6 class periods. And then on the 3 days they're not in school. So if I'm a Monday, Thursday kid, I'm not coming to school on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday. I will still have academic requirements, about 2 hours and 45 minutes worth of academic requirements, about 25 minutes per class period. So the student will log into Canvas each of those 3 days when they're in asynchronous at-home instruction, and they will have assignments that they have to do for each of those 6 periods. They'll also need to check in with their teachers. We're still working on the details of what that will look like for us. We have a couple of different ideas. There will also be an office hour period or short time block that parents can connect with the teachers if they're struggling with what the students should be doing in asynchronous instruction. Attendance is required on asynchronous days, just as it is on when students come in 2 days a week, attendance will be taken, and then the 3 days that they're at home, attendance will be taken. So we will continue to monitor student participation and ensure that they are completing their work. We're already getting asked lots of questions about, what if I don't want to do hybrid? I have been super happy with CDL. I've liked keeping my kid at home. I'm not sure it's safe for my middle schooler to come back to school. And we're still working on our plan for that. It's very complicated when you're talking about 6 different teachers that the student has during the day and how you schedule that, and how we've intentionally cohorted the students. It's very tricky, and for every little nuance change we make, like keeping kids in CDL, it's not as simple as you might think it is. And so bear with us as we navigate what might be possible. What will be possible for sure is GP Online, and we will be sending out information to our families that really do not want to come back in this hybrid approach at middle school to join GP Online. GP Online is a much different format than our CDL has been, and will be much different than hybrid, of course. In GP Online, students really need to be self-sufficient. They're going to get 1 check-in each day with 1 teacher. The remainder of their day, about 4 hours a day, they need to be engaged in the content that's in a product that we use called Edgenuity. So it really requires a student who is motivated, self-disciplined, works through that curriculum. And so we want to encourage parents to make sure they're thinking, asking the right questions about how GP Online works for them. So be looking for more information from Mr. Sale and Mr. Blanchard. And I just want to thank our administrative team at the middle school. They are really gearing up for the beginning of our hybrid. For the high school, again, bringing 900 kids on campus each day, high schoolers who are going to be excited to see each other, making sure that we don't have kids congregating, that we really are maintaining our requirements for physical distancing is going to be a challenge. But the other part of challenge at the high school level, and why for us bringing students back in the middle of a quarter is just not feasible, is how we cover the content and how we ensure students are keeping with what they need to do in order to achieve the credit towards graduation. So having a high school start close to 3rd quarter, which is February 1st, is our goal and intention. It will all depend on the metrics, obviously. Director Huber Cantola spoke to that. It's also going to depend on how our 4-5 gets up and started, and then our 6-8. Are we doing it safely? Are we containing no breakouts in our schools? Do we feel ready for 900 kids to come on campus? And so we really want to make sure we're attending to the safety of your students, and our staff. It's a high priority for us. So that model that I just shared with you for middle school about a Monday, Thursday, Tuesday, Friday is very similar, but at the high school level, it will be 4 periods every day. As high school parents out there know and understand, we have divided our school year up into 4 quarters, and in a quarter, students are doing a semester's worth of work, earning 2 credits towards their graduation requirements. So the students will attend 4 classes. I should have looked at the schedule again. The schedule is not finalized. We're still working with our staff on the time footprint, but I want to say the periods are about 70 minutes in length, maybe 75 minutes in length. They will be in their class period, and then they will move to their next class period. Cohorting is a lot more of a challenge at the high school when you're talking about a student who wants to take metals fabrication in our VOTEC building, and a student who needs to take math in the core building, then needs to go to the science lab for chemistry. There's a lot of movement that happens at the high school, and it's our job to ensure students understand the rules and protocols about how do I transition from point A to point B, keeping my physical distance from my friends, and getting there and getting set up. Lunch is going to be a big deal and a big difference at the high school. And I just would start encouraging you to start talking to your students now. It will be a closed campus. Students will be, I mentioned zones at the middle school. There will also be zones at the high school. Students will be walked to those lunch zones and will be monitored. They will have to stay in their lunch group for the entire 30-minute lunch period. We don't really have a recess per se at the high school level, and so we're trying to think of ways that we can engage students on the campus at Grants Pass High School during their lunch break. But leaving campus will not be an option, and delivering meals to the high school will also not be an option. So DoorDash or any kind of meal delivery will not be something we can allow. So it'll be a much different format for a high school student coming on campus at Grants Pass High School. But all that being said, we, the secondary administrators, teachers, our support staff and team, just like you heard Director Zatola saying, we are eager to get kids back. We want to see their faces. We miss them. We are trying very hard and lots of creative, and there are some really great things happening in CDL classrooms and in our leadership groups. I know just last week it was, the seniors got to come on campus in a physical distance format and sign the senior walk. We're looking for other opportunities to bring more students on campus in our limited in-person instructional model. So we are trying to find ways to keep kids connected to the school and trying to be very creative around it. We appreciate our parents' patient with us as we try to do this well and right for your student and for our staff to ensure that everybody stays healthy and safe. The one thing that we want to give you some resources for is how you can reach out for mental health supports for your student. Dr. Bloomquist is going to address some supports that are available in Grants Pass School District for those needs.
Thank you, Trish. So we know that this time has been incredibly hard on everybody. It's like this dark layer that's over the top. And what we know from the brain science and how our brain actually works is that when we feel well, then we think well. And that's kind of hard to do when you're cooped up in your house or you have all these rules and things like that. So we have teams that are at each site, actually. We have behavior interventionists, specialists, we have social emotional counselors, and we have school counselors all throughout our school district. We also partner with Options for Southern Oregon, and we have therapists that are available. And so one of the things we're doing as a team is providing those kinds of ideas and concepts and tools for teachers to then embed into their curriculum, things like brain breaks, things like times to just do something fun together, to laugh a little bit, to try to lighten up this darkness that's happening. And so those are happening all the time. We've provided some resources for staff, for example, so that when students might be presenting a certain way, when staff see that, whether it's through video conferencing or maybe that limited in person, they have some pathways to help that student. It's just really important that we all pay a lot of attention to how our children are doing, how the students are presenting in all of these environments. This is very stressful. A lot of kids will not say anything. They're just kind of hold it in. And that process of holding it in is really unhealthy over the long haul for that child. So finding pathways to get them to talk about it. If you are concerned about your student and they're exhibiting signs of, say, increased anxiety, maybe even some mood swings or depression, we really want you to call us. Call your school. We can get you connected to one of our counselors or behavior intervention specialists who can kind of work through some of those issues your child's dealing with, that maybe that your family's dealing with. Those are really critical, that we get more people talking to each other to intervene and get those issues addressed right off the bat. There are also a lot of resources on our website. So if you go to our Grants Pass website and you go to parents and then you do resources, there's even a COVID resources there for things. We've put a lot of information out there that are sort of good things to do during a pandemic. Now we're all learning this as we go, right? So we're learning what is best for us when we're having to be at home, when we have to be careful going outside, when we're coming to schools. All these things are concerning to people. So there's a lot of activities there and processes that are really beneficial for all families to practice. Ways to lighten things up a little bit, to have fun, even though we have to be socially distanced. We're coming into a holiday season. This is going to be really complicated, especially when we have orders to try to minimize even more the number of people that we have contact with through the holiday season. So these are very hard things for us all to do. Talking with your kid, then reaching out to one of us at the schools. You can talk to the principal, you can talk to the front office. One of us will get you connected to somebody who can kind of talk you through some ways to help your child. Those are really just crucial that we all do that together. The last little bit here is just then to turn it over to our superintendent, Kurt Kolb. The stage is yours.
Thank you. Dr. Bloomquist, thank you so much. So the governor just issued a 2-week freeze, I guess we'll call it, as well as issued some executive orders recently. And so what does that mean for education? Well, we've been given clear direction and guidance that that 2-week freeze does not apply to education. And so all those rules that were created in the executive order do not apply to us. So we can still move forward under ODE guidance and the opening schools and the metrics. Recent information was issued regarding K-12 sports. They are still allowed. However, only outdoor activities are allowed. So we're still going to do everything we can. We're going to provide every opportunity we can for our students to be engaged in something outside the classroom. And so we're going to continue to explore that. We're open to ideas. We have teachers who want to facilitate extra clubs and other things. So anyway, K-12 sports, indoor sports are put on hold for now, and outdoor sports are going to still be going. The other thing I want to touch on right now is this travel advisory. It is Thanksgiving. We all love to be around family, and I know for my family personally, it's a tradition and it's a huge gathering. It's not happening this year for the first time since I've been engaged and got to meet my wife's family. So the travel advisory is a recommendation to not travel outside of the state. And we support that recommendation and encourage that recommendation. And then if you do decide to travel out of state, the recommendation is to self-quarantine for 14 days upon your return. And again, we support that recommendation. It is not a requirement that we have a capacity to enforce or address. And so I want to touch on that before we close tonight. We're encouraging our staff the same way. Please stay local, stay home, and keep your gatherings small. So it's my final plea is to implore with all of you and encourage you to implore with those around you that we've got to do this right if we want our kids to be back in school. And so anything you can do or encourage others, we're trying to do the same thing and ask the same thing of our folks. We need to do that. We want our kids back, and we want to get back to those relationships and interactions that education is known for, and I'm super proud of for Grants Pass School District. So I think that closes for the night. Thank you so much for joining us. I am going to turn it over to Kristen Hosfeld to see if there's any questions that we need to answer. It looks like my team did a good job of keeping up in the Q&A. So Kristen, if you're out there, is there anything else you see out there that we might want to address?
So there are a few that have come in that in case people aren't following everything that we've answered in the Q&A, that we could maybe just go over in the group, especially for those who are joining us by phone and maybe don't have access to all of the questions that have come through. We've had a few questions in regards to how will buses work for students? Will we have to drive our students? Director Ely, is that a question that you'd like to answer?
Sure, I can answer that. We will be providing busing for all of the students who need that service. And so just like during a regular school year, the bus routes are very similar. What your student would be used to on a normal school year. Students will have to wear their masks while they're on the bus. And one thing to note, if your student does get on the bus and they look like they're not feeling well, the bus driver will put them in an area that is somewhat isolated from the other students on the bus. And then when that student gets to school, they'll be escorted to the office, and you as the parent or guardian would be called to come and pick up the students. But we are doing our best to provide consistent bus service just like we would in any regular school year.
Thank you, Director Ely. Another question is, what if after Thanksgiving cases spike even more? Will this impact our return to school plans?
I'll touch on that real quick. So we need to plan forward. We need to plan in a direction that we can bring kids back, so that when the opportunity is there, we seize that opportunity. It is very possible that an outbreak happens here in Josephine County and the metrics go the wrong way. And yes, we will pivot back after that. We'll go back to the guidance. We'll go back to the metrics that say what we can and cannot do. And but we will exhaust every opportunity to bring your kids back to us. I hope that answers the question.
The next question, and this one's come, so I've kind of summarized this. We knew school would reopen eventually. Why weren't we ready to go day one when the metrics changed?
Well, I'll touch on that, and I'll feel free the rest of my team. So I answered in the Q&A that, you know, this has been interesting. We've changed our plans 10 times. My team could attest to this. Plans for lunch, plans for busing, plans for cohorting, plans for schedules. Metrics have changed. When metrics change, our plans have to change. I really would be amazing to just be able to flip a switch and do it. The logistics of cohorting, checking kids in, temperature taking, isolating when COVID happens, it's complex. If you haven't read the Ready School Safe Learners guidance document and the 4 supporting documents that go with it, it's about 300 pages of riveting material. But it's complicated, and we just appreciate your patience as we do this safely. And as Director Evans pointed out, we are the largest school district that actually gets to bring kids back right now. And we are so thankful for that. And we need to do it well. We need to do it right. There's a lot of eyes on us to do it well, and we're going to do it. We're going to do it safely.
We have a question about protocol. How does the district determine that a student or staff member has contracted COVID? So how do we find out about that? Director Ely?
Well, a couple of ways we can find out about that. The staff member can self-report that they've tested positive, and in the case of a student, we could possibly hear about that from a parent or guardian. But ultimately, we will be notified by the health department if there is a positive case that is affecting our district. And even if we do get a self-report from a staff member or from a parent about their child, I always follow up with the health department just for confirmation of the test results.
Thank you, Director Ely. How do we monitor students keeping their masks on during the school day?
Do you want me to talk about that one?
If you could, our Director Safety Officer.
So that is a challenging one. And so the teachers have to monitor the students and their mask use. And so that's kind of like you guys know as parents, when there's something that you want your kids to do, you have to keep on them about it. And so it's the same thing in schools with students wearing the masks. But I do have to say, the students have been amazing about keeping their masks on. I think they know that this is serious, and they know that if they want to stay in school, they have to keep themselves healthy as well as the others around them. And so the kids have been amazing. And like when we have any other kind of emergency during a regular school year, we can always count on the kids to do the right thing. So parents out there, you're doing a good job.
And I'll just chime in on that from the experience of our K3 students. We anticipated it not being that big of a problem based on all summer long our childcare situations, daycares and preschools and things like that, where they were already following that guidance, that it would be okay. And that turned out to be very true, and is really it's really almost a non-issue across the district in our K3, and I anticipate that only being easier actually as students are older.
Thanks, Director Zatola. Director Evans, I know there were a few questions coming in related to seniors. Do you kind of want to summarize what the spirit of some of those questions were and just address those for our families?
You betcha. I just want to acknowledge that this situation is not easy for any grade level, but we recognize very well that it's not easy for seniors. Last spring, we experienced it firsthand. On March 13th, it was shut down, and we lost all kinds of time and activities and events with our seniors. And I think the high school is really trying to attend to that. I saw a question about college applications and needing help and support. There is a great resource out there. The College and Career Center has put an entire package together and will do Zoom meeting, and we can even do some limited in-person work with students who need help with their college applications. I encourage you to contact Shauna Bland in the College and Career Center and get the help and support that you need in order to get those applications done. The transcripts needed for college applications are available through our counseling center. Rhonda Toker is your point of contact for that. In terms of getting seniors on campus first and foremost, because this is their senior year, we are really trying to attend to that. But at the same time, it's complicated when you think about how teacher schedules work. I don't just have seniors in my class. I also have freshmen, sophomores, and juniors, depending on what class I teach. Obviously for econ and government, that's a little bit easier to accomplish, but it's not quite so simple when you have some of our elective classes that have mixed classes. So if a senior comes on campus and they're a band student, but the rest of the band's not there, but then they go to their government econ classes, we want our seniors to have the best senior year possible. The situation is not ideal for that. So if you have ideas and suggestions, I encourage you to contact Grants Pass High School and talk with one of the administrators about ideas and suggestions.
Thanks, Director Evans. We've had a few questions. So again, I'm kind of summarizing the spirit of the question. Right now, kids are getting 5 days of guided schooling. In a hybrid model, it will be 2. Is this a better model for kids? Why is this a better model for kids?
I will start to address that. I see Director Evans took her microphone off, but what we're recognizing right now through either survey data or teacher feedback is kids are very isolated right now. And while we believe academic learning is critical for all kids and achievement is critical for all kids, we recognize that school is a source of social development for our children, and they have missed out on 8 months of critical social development, and they need to be around their peers. We have the vast majority of our students have, in a survey, have connected with another peer, most of them 1 or fewer per week. That's heartbreaking. And we see it in their affect in the classroom. We see it in their declining engagement in the educational model we're providing right now. And we believe that their mental health, their social emotional wellness needs to take precedence above academic learning. As an education institution, we do more than educate kids, we grow people. And the relationships are critical to do that. If they want to be successful later in their academic endeavors or future jobs, they need to have the relational aspects that they develop in our public schools. And so if there's any of my other directors who want to jump in on that response, but that's me and my heart and what I believe about education and what our kids are missing right now.
Kirk, I'll just add to that, back to that mental health and wellness concept and piece that we've been trying to attend to. That relationship bit does attend to wellness in terms of our emotions and our ability to think well. And so given all the times that kids are having to spend alone or isolated from their peer group, having some time together to practice being social and to work on those dynamics, but also building up their esteem in those contexts really does makes a big difference for learning. And so there's that tension between trying to get through content, even if a brain isn't ready for it, and getting the brain ready for it in a good space, and then providing content. And that content will actually stick longer in the brain and be more applicable if the child is ready for that. But if they're not, we're just jamming through content and that child isn't socio-emotionally well, they're not going to pick up the content anyway. So that's that tension that we're trying to attend to, and that being in person when we can, that attends to a lot of that.
I will also chime in to say two things. One, just reiterating again, that has been a large part of our conversations about what do we think is the best direction for our district and for our students, and that tension between the delivery of content and the human connection, the relationships, the mental and emotional and social well-being of our students. But on the content side, I will say that what we have learned in K3 is that with the smaller class sizes, we are getting through more content in a day than we would in a normal typical year, when students have more opportunities for practice, for responding to questions, for we call it, in the early years we call it miles on the tongue when we're learning to read. So it's not just like they're just getting through a day's worth of content in a day. They're actually getting through more than that in a day.
All right, thank you, everyone. And we are going just a bit over, but I want to touch on one other question that I've seen. I think we've addressed every question that's come in. One question that came in was, what should a family do if they need additional support? If they're in the hybrid model, but they're a single parent or they don't have someone to be home with their kids, what should a family do if they think that they need some additional support? And I guess this could go to either elementary or secondary or both.
I'll go ahead and jump. One of the best things you can do first and foremost is connect with the teacher. Send them an email, let them know what your student's struggling with. They might feel more connected and gets them remotivated. And
well, I can never go second after Director Evans. She always covers it all. Hitting the nail on the head. Maybe just also, certainly the teacher first and foremost, that's usually who you have the best relationship with. But also at the elementary school, we have what's called a BIS, or a behavior intervention specialist, who could be that resource as well. And then the equivalent to that at the secondary level would be counselors. So certainly reach out to those people as well. I think the most important thing is to not be afraid to. I think it's sometimes hard to ask for help. I'm a little bit of the pot calling the kettle black, or whatever that phrase is, that we tend to not ask for help, when I know on the receiving end, those of us working in education, that's all we want to do is to help as best we can. We might not have the perfect answer, but we certainly want to help, and we want to try to problem solve. So I think that's the first thing, is don't be afraid to reach out and ask for help.
Thank you so much. And I think it looks like we have gotten through all the questions that have come in. Director Bloomquist, if you wouldn't mind popping up the email one more time. If we didn't get to your question, or if you think of something else that you'd like to ask, you can email us. It's Office of the Superintendent with underscores in between each word at grantspass.k12.or.us. Again, thank you so much for being here tonight, learning more about our plans for returning more students back to school. We really appreciate you taking the evening to come here and learn about our plans.